Yo, what's up, guys? I'm having a few re-ups, and I was thinking about the following. What is the difference in odds of getting a quad speed on a slot 3 versus a quad speed on a slot 4? And there's definitely always that motivation of like, oh, I just need the quad speed on my crit rate slot 4 and I'm going to be really good. But in the end, there are fewer lines or fewer stats in the slot 3 and therefore might it be better. Also for me, in the current state of the game, I got a fair bit of quads throughout. If we just select this to 30 and up on Swift and we select them for all of the runes that are possible, we can now see that I have 94 quads, which is definitely a good bit. If we select it to Swift, it's 14. But you do notice one thing. I don't have a single quad in slot 3, which is kind of interesting right there. So for that reason, re-upping into slot 3 becomes a little bit more interesting. Then again, I'm not the biggest fan of re-upping Swift because Swift is the easiest dungeon to farm. And it's mostly better to do it on Vio. But Vio, I'm kind of like well distributed a little bit on every slot by now. And I'm kind of fine on Vio. Will, I could maybe use a few more, so Will would be a decent target. But at least I got in every slot as well. Whereas in Swift, I'm still missing on that slot 3. So then I was thinking like, hey, is it good to go for re-upping on that slot 3? And what are actually my odds of a quad speed? So rather than doing all the math myself, you just ask that to an AI these days and they will kind of crunch the numbers. So your odds of getting a quad speed, if the speed is already in there, is a 1 in 256, which is definitely a little bit of a low number. I kind of asked it to do the exact math on like all of the stats on the slot 3 versus all of the stats on the slot 4. It did not really do that math for me. I asked a bunch of times and it just didn't give the answer. Maybe someone in the comment section can actually give like the definite answer on it that actually makes a lot of sense. But through experience, it says, like, just do the math, brother. Like, I don't care what the experience say. Just do the math. But on slot 3, it's higher by 10 to 25% chance to get a quad speed in it rather than on a slot 4 or slot 6 because, or also slot 5 because you simply have more stats in that. Also, an interesting fact is, the odds of you getting a 30 speed quad, that is absolutely insane. So I'm going to ask it, what are the exact odds for any of those quad speeds of any. Let's see if we can figure that out to get the exact odds on all of those. Does he actually give me a table? Yeah, that seems to be right over there. So that's actually kind of interesting. So that's okay. I think he's going in for all of the quads, which is technically 1615. I'm not sure if it's taking in the assumption that you can also have multiple different variances of actually getting that right number, but it seems to be kind of odd over there. Innate odds do help on slots, sure, so that's... no, I think these numbers are kind of off, I would say. Or it shouldn't be higher odds to get a 29 than it should be to get like a 28, for example. Sometimes AIs understand things, sometimes not really, but let's see if they do consider that out there. Doesn't seem to be... Okay, so it's now going for the 24th. I did not ask about 24s. No one cares about 24s. I only want the numbers between quads or 24 to 25. So let's see if this does make more sense. No, it doesn't really seem to make that four-way sequence very high value. But how is this 1 in 5,000 and this one in 800? Yeah, that doesn't really seems to be right. I'm not too sure what this AI is thinking about that one, but odds on these, pretty darn low. But then the real question is, should you be re-upping just to get quad speeds? Well, the honest answer is no. I would not recommend to re-up just for quad speeds. Sure, you're gonna hit it at some point, and then you'll be like, oh, what if I did it on this one perfect rune, and that could have gotten my, like, 27 quad that you get somewhere else, or something like that. But in the end, I think I would recommend most people to re-up that if the roll goes into anything, it is still pretty usable. So, for example, with this one, let's say I get a 35 crit damage. I would definitely use that. Let's say I get a 30 crit rate. I would definitely use that. Let's say I get a 40 resistance. I would not use that. So, it's kind of min-maxing of what kind of rolls can it go into outside of your quad speed and still be usable. And that's the thing, for example, let's say you're re-upping a slot 4 on crit rate. This one, the only thing I care about is speed. If it rolls 40 in HP, it's useless. If it rolls 40 in attack, it's still useless. If it rolls 35 in crit damage, it is still useless. I want to have by minimum 22 speed and then maybe a roll in attack for like 14 or 16 attack. That I would say is like, okay, I kind of dig that. Whereas this kind of rolls, like whatever it rolls into high crit rate or crit damage, I could use it on some kind of nuking bolt on like a Grogan or a Lucian or something along those lines. So that is my biggest recommendation with re-ups in general, is to try to find a re-up target that you would say is like, okay, I sure prefer my quad speed on this, because in the end, you're aiming for your quad speed. Everyone is, I understand that. But if it doesn't roll quad speed, but it rolls X, Y, or Z, I can still use that. And I think that's just the biggest take on re-ups, because in the end, if you're re-upping for your 30 speed and whatnot, like it's a 1 in 10,000, or wait, 1 in 100,000, every re-up these days, wait, a re-up pack costs about 30-ish, you get 7 re-ups on that. So that's, just to quickly do the math on re-ups, how expensive it would be if you're only re-upping for your 30 speed and you don't care about anything else in life, pretty much. Well, every re-up now, you have like re-up packs of 7 re-ups, and you buy them for 30. Whoops, of course, got to do that the other way around. So it's about 4.28 USD per re-up. Then the number was about like this for your chances of re-upping. So you need a 462,857 USD to get one quad speed on 30 by just re-ups, and then you don't include like all of the crystals you get and blah 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 shenanigans, whatever. So yeah, trying to re-up for your specific 30 speed is maybe a little bit out of your reach. Like sure, some lucky people might get there at some point, but I would rather focus for spreading your win chances a little bit and trying to focus on something that you can still use the rune if it rolls something completely different, because you're probably gonna get your 30 crit rate re-up and your 35 crit damage re-up before you actually get your 30 speed re-up. And then it's probably at some kind of slot that you're like, yeah, if this was at a different slot, I would have used it. If it's at current slot, it's horrible. And I would say that's also in general sense with re-upping Swift. Swift is a little bit more specific to you just want to get damage stats for them to be good. Whereas if you re-up for Violent, if you go for like 40 HP, it's very useful. If you get like 40 defense on the slot 5 or something, it's still very usable. If you get 40 attack and you're re-rolling on the crit damage 4, it's still really usable. But then again, if you get 40 attack and you're re-rolling on the crit rate 4, it's like, yeah, I can probably fit it in somewhere-ish, but it's definitely a little bit less interesting. So those are the things that I do recommend people to keep in mind for re-ups in general. What is the re-up that would give you more chance of having more success? And you also have the Refinement Stones right now. Kind of the same thing for the Refinement Stone. Actually, for the Refinement Stone, in a lot of cases, I recommend people to go for a perfect slot 2. And then, in my case, I really lack on crit rates 4. I really lack on crit rates, not crit rate 4. I really lack on a crit rate on a slot 2. And I really lack accuracy on a slot 2. So if these are the perfect stats for me, that if I get this and it only rolls in these two, but preferably high rolls, like if this was 18, 24 and I wouldn't have cared about the others, I would have absolutely kept that. Of course, I'd rather have like an innate of crit damage, but I can kind of miss that 7 or 6 crit damage in there. It's not that big a deal. But for me, these kind of things, like if I get a 30 plus accuracy, it's my highest best in slot accuracy. If I get a 22 plus crit rate, it is a highest best in slot crit rate. And those runes on slot 2 are pretty hard to get. And if you get like a 40 accuracy, or you get like a 30 at the 40, and if you get like a 30 crit rate on those are crazy good runes and very usable, because if you get 30 crit rate, like you barely have to get any crit. You go for crit damage 4 and you're still fixed out on your crit rate. Same for the accuracy. You don't have to go for an accuracy 6 and it's still fixed out on your accuracy. But also, what if it rolls super high in like attack or HP? It's still really good. And I also at some point was like, oh, I really kind of miss a good crit rate 4 for a Sonya. But then again, it rolled like this, which is nearly the perfect stats. If it was actually high rolled, if this was like a 24 on the 16, it would have definitely been an upgrade, because then I would have removed this for a attack flat, and then it would be a crazy good Sonya rune. But the only 2 options that I want this rune to roll into is 3 in here, 1 in there, or 4 in there, and nothing in the rest. Those are the only 2 options that I actually care for. Whereas if we look at this one for a Refinement Stone, I am fine with 4 in these, I'm fine with 4 in these, I'm actually also fine with 4 or 4 in these, so any quad it makes, if it's a high quad, I'm happy with it. But a 3 on 1, I would be happy, a 1 on 3, I would also be happy. Any of those kind of things, like anything high rolled, I would probably keep it. And you don't get that many Refinement Stones. Sure, you could try to get like your perfect speed quad or whatnot, but as mentioned before, spreading your win chances is in most cases the best scenario to try to get like an improvement rather than trying to get the perfect rune. And yeah, that's just the main thing for this whole video, and that's a high tripler on the flat HP. I also am not 100% sure if some runes just have better RNG than some other runes. Sometimes I just tend to switch to a different rune because I feel like, yo, this rune is just simply not cutting it. Let's just switch to a different one and let's just see if that one actually has a little bit of a better chance. For me, I mostly go by the logic, if something quadded before, it can quad again. If that's really a logic that makes any sense, probably not really, but so far I have been getting decent success with it. But it's also the luck of the try. It's the same thing as you say, it's like, oh, I only pull good LDs if I summon on the toilet. But then your statistical value of summoning on the toilet is more often than summoning not on the toilet. And therefore, your luck of the try simply happens because you try your luck on the toilet. Yeah, that's one of those things, like everyone likes to believe in something, right? So those are pretty horrendously bad rules as well, but I have way too many of those targets. I've been farming giants for like an insane amount of time. And for how much I have been farming giants, for how little I've been getting quads on the slot 3, it's pretty, yeah, RNG right there. That's just RNG is gonna RNG, right? Simple as that. Let's see if the final few, this one is one of those. If this was like I kind of already have those, but if this was like a 12 crit rate on the 21, I would have probably kept it, but for me, these kind of things, like my rune quality is already pretty high up, that 21 speed is not really going to cut it. If this was, let's say, a 24 speed with this kind of defense, I would have absolutely kept it. But 21 is kind of on the edge where it's like, yeah, it doesn't really add anything to it for me personally. So we just keep rolling those, and sure, as we just saw with the statistics, you're not really going to have the greatest of odds of getting anything by buying re-ups. But then again, the game gives you a whole bunch of free re-ups, and then we just make your way work with those. And buying re-ups, if it's on like the side thing of a pack, it's fine. But just purely going into re-up buying, you need to be a little bit of swiping a little bit too much right there. And in the end, to keep in mind, what is a good re-up target just depends on how your account looks like. What is your account missing? But also then, what if it doesn't roll exactly like that? What can your account still use to still have a decent rune? And in my case, that is currently re-upping slot 3 on Swifts over here. And for the Refinement Stones, as I mentioned, that's slot 2. But I'm also somewhat tempted to do the same thing on slot 2s for Will, maybe even Despair, and also Violent. So for Refinement Stones, those will be going into the slot 2 speeds for me for a very long time, I think. So that's my recommendation there for re-ups. Hope you did enjoy this video. Hope you learned a thing or two. If you did, subscribe to the channel, like this video. I'll see you as always in the next one. Pretty quick one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.